Everyone ignored the millionaire's deaf mom at the airport until a single dad spoke to her through sign language. The airport was chaotic that afternoon, a tangle of rolling suitcases, hurried footsteps, and the constant hum of announcements. People brushed past one another, eyes glued to screens or their phones. In the middle of the commotion stood an elderly woman with silver hair pulled into a neat bun. She clutched a boarding pass tightly, her eyes darting anxiously. What she didn't have, and what everyone seemed to ignore, was the fact that she was deaf. Her name was Margaret. She was in town to visit her daughter, a high-powered CEO who often traveled overseas. Yet despite her daughter's wealth, Margaret felt invisible. Airport staff had glanced at her politely but moved on. Passengers sidestepped her, impatient with what they assumed was confusion. Then, across the terminal, a man noticed her. Not in passing, but really noticed. His name was Daniel, a single dad in his mid-30s, juggling a toddler on his hip while holding a small backpack. He had learned sign language from a friend years ago and had always cherished the ability to connect silently, meaningfully. Margaret was trying to read the departure board, her brows furrowed in frustration. Daniel approached cautiously, kneeling to be at her eye level. "Can I help you?" He signed with a warm smile. Margaret's eyes widened. Relief washed over her features as she responded, "I need to find gate B12. Daniel quickly guided her through the crowded terminal, explaining, signing, and pointing out landmarks. Passengers who had ignored her now watched curiously, some whispering to each other. At one point, a young boy tugged at his mother's sleeve, mimicking Daniel's gestures, fascinated. But just when they thought the ordeal was over, Margaret froze in front of a closed gate. The staff had already started boarding. Panic crept into her expression. Daniel, seeing her distress, didn't hesitate. He raised his voice gently, calling out to the gate agent, then signed urgently to Margaret that she would make it. With quick thinking and calm persistence, he helped her board just in time. Once seated, Margaret turned to him, her eyes glistening. "Thank you," she signed slowly, her hands trembling. No one tried to help, but you." Daniel simply smiled, ruffling the toddler's hair on his hip. "Everyone deserves to be seen," he signed back. A few weeks later, Margaret sent Daniel a handwritten letter expressing how much his kindness had meant to her. She also mentioned, almost shyly, that her daughter had been inspired to start a foundation focused on accessibility for travelers with disabilities. Daniel's small gesture had sparked a ripple far beyond the airport. The story of the single dad who didn't look away spread quietly at first, then more widely, touching hearts. It reminded people that true humanity doesn't care about wealth or status. It's in the simple acts, the courage to notice and the decision to help. As for Daniel, he shrugged off the praise, focusing instead on bedtime stories, playground trips, and small everyday gestures. "Kindness," he told his toddler, signing as he always did, "is free, but it's the most valuable thing you can give." And in that bustling airport, where once Margaret had felt invisible, she realized she had been truly seen. A few weeks after that airport encounter, Daniel found himself in a small cafe, sipping coffee while his toddler played with crayons at the table. He didn't expect to see Margaret again, but there she was, walking in with a bright scarf and a little notebook in hand. Their eyes met, and she smiled warmly, signing, "I wanted to see you again. There's something I want to show you." Curious, Daniel waved her over. She placed her notebook on the table, flipping it open. Inside were sketches and notes, a blueprint for an accessibility app she and her daughter had started designing. It would help deaf or hard-of-hearing travelers navigate airports, find staff trained in sign language, and even provide silent alerts for boarding announcements. Daniel's eyes widened. "This is amazing," he signed, his hands trembling slightly. "You turned a small act into something that could help thousands." Margaret shook her head, a hint of laughter in her eyes. "No, you gave me hope that someone sees me. That's what sparked this." As they talked, Daniel's toddler crawled onto Margaret's lap, giggling. She signed softly to the child, and he responded with pure delight. It was a quiet moment, Yet it carried a weight far beyond words, the shared understanding that human connection transcends barriers, spoken or not. Over the next few months, the app went live. News outlets picked up the story. Single Dad's gesture inspires life-changing app for deaf travelers. Margaret and Daniel were invited to speak at events, but Daniel remained humble, always redirecting attention to the everyday acts of kindness he believed anyone could offer. One evening, as he tucked his toddler into bed, Daniel signed, "Kindness doesn't need an audience." The child's wide eyes reflected the glow of the bedside lamp. It just matters. Meanwhile, Margaret's daughter reached out to Daniel personally, offering him a formal role as an accessibility consultant for the foundation. Daniel politely declined. He preferred the simple life, but promised to continue mentoring, teaching sign language and helping wherever he could. And so, a moment that began as a fleeting act in a crowded airport became a legacy of compassion. Margaret no longer felt invisible. Daniel found a quiet purpose beyond his daily struggles, and the world, even in small pockets, had grown a little gentler. In the end, it wasn't wealth or influence that changed lives. It was the courage to notice, to pause, and to reach out. And sometimes all it took was one person who decided to speak with their hands, but really with their heart.